playing around with some ideas. It's funny that I've chosen yet another transportation related topic for this video. I promise you that's not all I'm interested in. It's just lately I've been dealing with airlines quite a lot. Mostly flying myself, but also, as you learned from the U.S. Airways video, um, trying to get my daughter out here for VidCon. And a few days ago, and I honestly don't remember why right now, but I was trying to find. I had a question in my mind, something that had to do with air travel. I can't remember what it was right now. And so I go online and I'm Googling it, and through that process, I just remembered something that I had seen before, whether it was online or in a magazine. I don't remember, but everything I was trying to find on Google, I wasn't getting, and I remembered something about Ask the Pilot. That just popped into my mind. So I Googled that, and I found askthepilot.com, which is this guy, what's his name? I'm going to edit this out later. Patrick Smith. Patrick Smith is his name, and he had, or has maybe still, I don't know, a column on Salon.com called Ask the Pilot, and I must have come across that at some point. And so when I put that in, I found his website, askthepilot.com. Turns out he has this book called Cockpit Confidential. And, it's basically, he's an airline pilot, and he answers all these questions that we all have about air travel. And on his website, there's a whole bunch of free information, like snippets from his book. And I read all those, and I was like, man, this would be the most amazing guy to be able to interview, but I'm a nobody. My YouTube's just starting. The podcast I'm already working on is a hit and miss kind of thing that my buddies and I do. I haven't started my solo podcast yet, but God, we need this guy. So I tweeted Adam Carolla and a couple of his Gary Halftard and Chris Loxamana and whatever, just go and look, this guy will never talk to me, but you guys gotta have him on your podcast. I know they won't do anything with it. I also tweeted Mr. Smith himself, but he's not gonna answer me either. So anyway, that's what started this whole thing. I got so immersed in reading the snippets from his book that I was like, screw it. It's $10 for the ebook through iTunes. So I got it on my iPad, and I read the entire thing in one sitting. And it wasn't enough. It was great information, and maybe I'll talk about some of it in a later video. But then I was like, I want to know more. I want to know more about this kind of stuff. Fascinates me. Anything that frustrates me really badly fascinates me, because I want to learn how it is that the people that make these decisions that frustrate me so badly and seem so counterintuitive and so removed from common sense, where these decisions come from, because it just drives me crazy. So, thanks to iTunes, I had some people that bought this book also bought these books. And there's one which the title I can't remember, which I probably will buy. Um, that's written by a long-term flight attendant, which I'm sure is a fantastic read. But I was more interested in some of the technical, financial, behind the scenes, because quite frankly, I think most airlines are some of the most crooked. Um, uh, I mean, they are a service industry, but they treat their customers awfully, horribly, and I wanted to see why some of this was. So there's another book called Full Upright Locked Position. Let me verify that that's what it's called. Full upright and locked position, yes. And it is by a fellow named Mark Gerchick. I'm guessing is his name. Gerchick. Gerchick, something like that. And this one kind of, it's interesting because he worked for the FAA, and so he knows a lot about not only how the airlines work, but how the FAA works and all this other different kind of stuff. And so what I decided to talk about in this video is fare structuring. How it is that the airlines determine how much you pay for your ticket. And anyone who has done any amount of online searching for tickets realizes that it's a complete crapshoot. It makes absolutely no sense. You can literally find a price on whether it's an airline website or one of the search engine websites like Travelocity or something like that. And in the time that it takes you to enter your information and get to the end where you submit it, the price has changed. It's absolutely insane. I mean, imagine if any other industry did this, where the price can fluctuate within minutes. Like, you go to the grocery store and you pick up a can of soup, and the tag on the shelf says it's $1.29, and 10 minutes later you get to the checkout and it's $3, and it's like, what? Just imagine if the store was like, what? Yeah, well, it got more expensive in the time it took you to walk over here. What's wrong with that? But that is exactly how it works with the airlines. The way Gerchick puts it in his book is he calls it finding the damn it price. As in, everybody's got a price that they're willing to pay. There's a maximum price that every customer is willing to pay for the plane ticket that they want for wherever they're going. For a family who's planning ahead and is taking a trip to Disney World, maybe they've got 4 or 5 people that they're trying to fly. They know way ahead of time. They're looking for the best price, the cheapest price. The businessman who suddenly finds out that he has to fly to Omaha tomorrow is just going to show up at the airport and see whatever is available. He doesn't have time, right, to search and find the best price and all of that kind of stuff. So here's a quote from the book, Full Upright and Locked Position. Quote, "The goal is to make you pay your top dollar for your airline seat, the price that just hits but doesn't exceed your point of resistance. Call it the damn it price. As in, if the fare goes up just another few bucks, we're cramming the kids in the back seat, damn it, and driving the 10 hours to grandma's. Everyone's got a damn it price. The airfare we will pay unhappily, but still pay. And the airline's job is to find it. If you feel you actually got a good deal and would have paid an even higher fare if necessary, somebody in the airline's revenue management department probably screwed up." That is, okay, stop the that is, go back, end quote. That is how they think, okay? And what's kind of creepy on a certain level to me is how specifically they orchestrate the pricing strategies of seats on the same flight. And we're not talking about the difference between first class, business class, and coach or economy. We're talking about the cost of seats within the exact same setting, especially economy. No, none of the airlines call it coach anymore. That's what we do. An airline can charge different fares for identical seats on the same flight. Back in the late 70s, I think it was 1979, is when deregulation of the airlines kicked in. When I was a kid in the early 70s, they were, I don't know if hampered is the right word, but they were, there was regulation. And so nobody could charge drastically higher or lower rates for the same flight on the same route and the same seat and all of that kind of stuff. The government said, they set the standards. And in the late 70s, they deregulated and the airline industry became privatized, just like regular business. It went on the stock market, all of that kind of stuff. And when that happened, they all just said, well, we can do whatever we want. And I support deregulation. I think I think it makes sense. I don't think the government should be controlling the airlines, but at the same time, the things that have happened in the intervening years that have led to some of the changes that they've made, it kind of makes you wish there was more oversight. So here's another quote from the book. "At first it seemed counterintuitive." Is that the word I used a little while ago? "To charge different prices for the same product depending on what sort of passenger was buying it. Lower for the plan-ahead tourist or retiree with time to burn. Service flexible is the airline jargon for those people. Higher for the $900 an hour Wall Street lawyer who absolutely positively has to catch the 8 a.m. flight to Washington and could hardly care less what the price is. As it turns out, those willing to pay the nobody in his right mind full coach fare or close to it for tickets bought only shortly before the flight make up 8 to 10% of passengers. So 8 to 10% of passengers are willing to pay full fare to fly coach. But they contribute 1/3 to 1/2 of all airline fare revenue. Process that for a minute. 8 to 10% of people, that's 8 to 10 out of every 100 passengers, are willing to pay full fare. And yet they contribute 1/3 to 1/2. That's 33% to 50% of all airline fare revenue. So it stands to reason that the airlines are going to find ways to make people pay that fare, right? Turn the page. Damn it. The worst thing in the world for an airline is to have an empty seat on a plane, any plane. Now, I can remember, and other people of my generation can probably remember, there's a lot about air travel that I can say about when I was a kid and how different it is now. For one thing, the leg room and the fact that people didn't take off their shoes and clip their toenails on flights and stuff. But outside of that, flights were regularly not full. It wasn't uncommon to be the only person in your 3-seat pod from the aisle to the window. I can't remember. I think in the last 3 years, with all the flying I've been doing, I've had two flights where I was at the window, somebody else was at the aisle, and we didn't have somebody between us, and we were both old enough to realize that that was a throwback and how glorious it was to not have to bump elbows with anybody or anything like that. Of course, it was on the shorter of the flights that I had to take getting across the country, but still, you take what you can get. If you can't, I'm 6 feet tall. I don't know who they think the seats on modern American jetliners are designed for. There's absolutely no room for comfort. And when you're sitting in, and I know it's domestic, and I know it's not a long flight, and I know I'm not going to Australia or anything like that, but I can't, for me to not be able to straighten my legs every once in a while, like even just to stretch, is just awful. And I like to sit by the window, which means if I want to get up into the aisle and stretch my legs or whatever, I have to wake up the guy in the middle and ask the woman on the aisle to stand up and interrupt her movie or her PowerPoint that she's working on or whatever. And, if you gave me just a couple more, just a little bit, they call it seat pitch, the distance between the back of one seat and the front of the next seat. And that's the seat back, not the front of the seat. Making sense? They call it seat pitch, and most airlines, I think, right now are down to like anywhere between 28 and 30 inches. And they would put them closer if they could, but that's the closest they can get, and still reasonably, and their testing shows people need to be able to get up and get out in case of an emergency. And if people could get out, because they need to empty a plane in 90 seconds in an emergency, right? So if people could get up and get out within 90 seconds with the seats closer together, the seats would be closer together. They do not care about our comfort whatsoever. They want to pack as many seats into these planes as they possibly can. And they can change the seating arrangement on any plane. The seats are put on tracks that run the full length of the plane. So they could very easily go in with a screwdriver, take out the last row of seats, loosen all the other ones, and shift them all back an inch or two. We'd all feel a little tiny bit more comfortable, but that last row sells 6 more tickets. So they pack us in as tight as they can. And if they have to take off with even one empty seat, they're unhappy. So that's the first thing you should know. But here's an explanation for that. This is from the book again. Why an empty seat is such a disaster for the airline. He cites June 2010 and again in June 2011. Major U.S. airlines filled an average of about 86% of their seats. If they had filled one more seat on every domestic flight, typical, they're averaging it out to a typical 160 seat plane. That would have boosted the average load from 86.0 to 86.8. And that one more seat on every flight would have made the difference between making a profit and making a loss. And the reason he uses those years is that the airline industry was having a really difficult time during those years, and they didn't make a profit. And so if they put one more butt in one more seat on every flight, they would have made a profit, and instead they made a loss. So there's reasons why they do this stuff. So fare management, which is the topic of this video, became crucially important. And it's with the advances in computer technology over the last, well, definitely the last 30 or 40 years, but even within the last 10 years, it's gotten crazy detailed in how they can do this. Sophisticated fare management, this is again from the book, can grow airline revenues up to 7%. And that's huge, because that is more than most airlines' profit margin. I think most of them are around, they're kind of like restaurants. They're like around 2 or 3% profit margin. Even though you're talking about huge amounts of money, airlines, it's really hard for them to make a profit. And I feel for them on that level, but the way that they go about getting the money from us is what I have a problem with. here's an example from the book. Doesn't point out a specific airline or anything like that. But a domestic fare basis code that reads, and I'm going to use some phonetic language here, Queen Lincoln 7, shit, what's N? Nevada Radio. Queen Lincoln 7 Nevada Radio. Did I just make up those last two? I'm not sure. But QL7NR is a moderately discounted coach fare, Q, good only on certain days of the week, L, which I'm guessing means limited, with a 7-day advance booking requirement, 7, and the ticket is not refundable, NR, if you don't use it. The first letter in your code is the most important, as it shows your fare class. I'm not going to get into, I highlighted like 3 pages of explanations of how this all works. But basically, like I said before, know that that confirmation number, as he says in the book, is like a tattoo across your forehead. He doesn't say across your forehead, he just says tattoo, but I picture it across your forehead, that announces to everybody within the airline culture how valuable you are. And he doesn't come right out and say it in this book, but essentially it gives them an excuse to treat you like shit, which makes no sense to me whatsoever. I do not understand why this is one of the few industries in this country where the private industries in this country, not government entities like the DMV, stuff like that, but you know, this goes back to my US Air rant of airline employees occasionally just decide that they can treat you like shit. And now I know why. You know, it doesn't really apply to my US Air rant because I paid full fare for Taylor to fly out to California. That was an expensive ass trip. So, you know, but maybe it's because I wasn't a ticket carrying paid passenger, and that's why my sweet ticket agent that we discussed before was such a ridiculous bitch to me. But you know, because she knows it. You know, I think that's probably exactly what it was. He's not, you know, he's already paid his money. You know, whatever. I don't know, but it amazes me. This video is kind of going off the rails from what I had intended it to be. It just amazes me that, because what they also do with these buckets of prices is they keep as many of the high-priced seats available as possible up until the last, and they follow these algorithms all the way right up until before departure, because they know percentages wise that there's going to be X amount of people that are going to rush in to the ticket counter minutes before the plane leaves and be willing to pay whatever it costs, and that's where they're going to make their money. The rest of us that paid $99, $129, $179, $200, whatever, we're just kind of seat fillers, and we're making it so that these short-term, last-minute people don't have to pay even more. That's all we are to the airlines. So, there's a mathematician from MIT named Carl DeMarkin, who says that finding the cheapest airfare between two cities is in fact an unsolvable mystery. He calculated in 2003, so what, 9 years ago, that there could be 25,401,415 possible fare combinations for a passenger flying round trip between Boston and San Francisco on American Airlines over a 3-day period. And that was 9 years ago. Or was that 11 years ago? 11 years ago. So it's probably double that by now, considering how much more computer heavy the whole booking situation is. And so in 2003, it was 25,401,415 possible different fare prices to fly from Boston to San Francisco in 3 days. So what is it now? 100 million different possible fare combinations? It's absolutely fucking ridiculous.